about it for 2 weeks, and it's such a great opportunity for me.
So, Tom, just tell the audiences a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah. So, look, I've been around startups for around 10 years, actually. So I came out of university with a PhD from Macquarie University and went straight into a medical device startup in the AI space. And then I moved on to another startup, which was around this kind of anti-counterfeit. And I found myself in China, where there's a big market for anti-counterfeit technology. So that's trying to fight the fakes. And now I'm moving on to a new, completely different startup, new company called i4u. And we really want to change the way in which gifts, digital gifts, especially gift cards, are given. We want to bring meaning, thought, and more appreciation to the act of giving a digital gift card.
So it's interesting you mentioned you've been around, in different parts of Asia. You mentioned China. Tell us some of your experiences in China.
Yeah, right. So, when I went there, I've been there traveling earlier, but then in about 2016, we opened an office in China. I brought to China all this equipment to build a printing lab there, or a printing system there, as a demonstration, because we had new investors, but we were trying to attract more investors there. So I brought a team of 5 engineers, including a common friend we have, and we just got to this empty office in China. Small office, but it's
whereabouts in China?
This is Wuxi, and Wuxi is about 2 hours from Shanghai, by the high-speed train, maybe a bit less. And so this was like a really startup city, like IoT is the focus there. And we were in like a big sort of IoT park, software park there, but we were doing a mixture of software and hardware. So I got there with 5 guys. We had 1 staff in China who was just the office manager, and we had to put together this facility. I mean, it was just a blank room. We had to set it all up, install security cameras, install our own system, which we had using our technology to open the doors and stuff like that, and then put our technology showcase there, actually.
So what was it like taking, 5 folks from Sydney and plonking them in China in some place? And how much Chinese do you speak?
Yeah, not a lot. Sei, who's a common friend of ours, he'd been to China a lot as well. And, but, he can't really speak Chinese, but he was very familiar, I mean, look, the place is really super friendly, when you're there, even though you won't find many people in cities like that who can speak English. We were really fortunate in that, the office manager could speak quite good English there. And, you just get by, people are people everywhere.
Yeah. And so what have you learned, and how long were you in China, and what have you learned from all of that experience?
Yeah, so I think in China, there's a lot of opportunity, but a lot of noise, because there's so many people and they're all trying to do business, So it's pretty tricky to find the right partners or the right customers, or this type of thing. There's just so much opportunity. You can spend a lot of time chasing down different leads. So I was there I wasn't doing sales or anything like that. I was trying to set up our technical side there, and making sure we could begin to hire staff, Chinese staff, to come and run those things and start to understand, what it is we're doing there, and building that business there. And the main founder of that company is, going ahead, continuing today, finding customers there in China, and building that business actually into something different. Actually, we've been pivoted actually.
So tell us more about that. I mean, is that something you had stocks in that company? Did you make something out of that? If you're able to share, did you lose it all? What was your journey in that?
No, this company's still continuing, and it's just that, actually we had a company in Australia and a company in China, and we've just like shifting most of the things to China, and especially like this year, look, you can't travel. Everyone knows we're stuck. We're stuck in Australia, and like I think this is a great opportunity for me to come out and then find new opportunities, because I've always been hidden behind the scenes of companies, like in a tech role, and now I'm really excited to start coming out of my shell, basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. So hopefully you made a little bit of cash as well, out of all of those startups that you talked about. So looking ahead, and you're talking about coming out of your shell, how do you sort of go about thinking about your current idea that you're working with at the moment, and tell us your journey.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, look, I've always been really interested in making video, and I know, look, now video is such an important medium. We've been talking about this in the incubator yesterday. We just had a video pitch session actually yesterday, right? It's so key. People look. Reality is there's so much video media out there. People are getting pretty lazy. Like, I will look at YouTube a lot for interesting content, not just watching movies or whatever. So like that is the most engaging thing between people. And I always used to make videos of my travels and things like this. Or I'm a big fan of the Rabbitohs, the South Sydney Rabbitohs, like in the NRL, right? So they won the grand final a few years ago, and after that, I made like a little song. It was actually a copy of like a Eddie Vedder song, but I put all these lyrics around the Rabbitohs, and I just put that on YouTube. But because there's so many Rabbitohs fans, it got quite a lot of like. I didn't do anything with this video; I just put it on there, but it got quite a lot of views somehow. So anyway, look, this because video is so engaging, right? And when people give gifts, and like I think about my wife, for example, she's like a person who will what do they call it? They call this like words of affirmation is like her language of love, actually. And I think a lot of people are like this, and that means that it's not so much the material gift; it's more about the thought, the meaning behind that when you give it to someone. And I think a lot of people appreciate gifts like that. So this is what we think is a really good idea, because gift cards, they're a pretty impersonal gift, type of gift, but they could be given in a much nicer way. When you give someone, you can instantly message it to someone, or it could still come on a physical card, and both of these experiences can launch a digital experience where the person is expressing their feelings or just doing fun things with this type of technology. I mean, you add into that some really interesting like camera tech, like what's available in Snapchat, for instance, where you can there's lots of AR and AI driven AR going into that, and so you can do a lot of fun things with that.
Yeah. So that's your latest idea. Tell us a bit more about, you mentioned your other co-founder, Richard.
Yeah.
How did you meet Richard? I know, listening to Richard, he said you guys know each other for about 10 years or something like that. But tell us the backstory.
Yeah. So, well, actually, in the previous company I was in, so we also we met through the other founder. I'm not even sure how they connected. I can't even remember now, but they connected, and then that company originally had other investors from Europe, and then Richard was on the team. He was the CEO of that company before we switched to having Chinese investors. And so Richard's taken that company forward until that point where it switched to the Chinese side, and then the other founder has taken the companies from there. And Richard had spent a lot more time in Singapore, and we were looking for companies. There's another company in Singapore that's related to this, two companies, and we were looking at sort of like interesting. It was a document security aspect of this anti-counterfeit technology we're producing, and we were trying to deploy that into Southeast Asia, actually, and we got quite far in Indonesia. But it's with a government type contract. But these government contracts, they're not always that easy, especially in that part of the world. So yeah, but yeah, we've been working together day and night, 24 hours, because we're always in a different time zone. Right now I'm working with Richard, and he's in Europe, and it's like 12 hours out. So I can just start talking to him in the afternoon, till midnight.
Yeah, so I mean, you've known each other for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Did you guys spend time in China together and in Singapore together? And I mean, tell us that story, man.
Yeah. So exactly. So I mean, I actually was running the company in Australia, so I was in Australia a lot, but I'd go on trips, to different trade shows, or for example, when we would deliver some equipment and capabilities, software to our customers in Asia, and we'd meet up with Richard, and then he would be coming to Australia quite frequently to have our strategy meetings and things like that.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about what happened there. I mean, was Richard call you up and saying, "Hey, I've got this amazing idea," or you guys were,
No, we've
like
been
sitting in Sydney somewhere?
okay. So literally, what happens like every night, right? I've got a 2-year-old boy, and like he just wants to. He can't go to sleep, just sitting there. So I have to take him for a pram walk every night. I go for like 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers every night. So I just would ring up Richard because it's the morning in Switzerland where he is at the moment, and we're just there talking, going through lots of ideas about what could really work, what problems people are having, what opportunities are out there, and we came upon this gift idea. I mean, I actually don't even know how we came upon it, but I knew that there's a big trend. Like this year, there's a massive trend towards like digital living, right? Everyone's been forced into this situation where they're taking up so many more digital experiences, digital tools for work. E-commerce e-commerce is crazy, right? It's like gone through the roof. And with that is like there's a massive shift in the way people are buying gifts. I mean, buying gifts online, and then the gift card market there's also massive growth there.
So is there a bigger story about what was the genesis of the idea, or are you just kind of renting while you kind of taking a kid over for a walk,
No,
over to Richard, or?
look, I don't know actually. I mean, it's just really about. I had these thoughts about how do we engage people through gifts, and we were initially thinking, not through gifts, sorry, through video, and we were initially thinking, is there something we can do between Australian products, and China, Australian products going to China, but we looked into this market, there's so many people in this space because you can mix like consumer engagement with traceability and these type of things, but this space is really, really like crowded. We had a discussion about it, both you and I, and so we had this idea. Even I started this idea there of gifts, like bringing people from China could buy Australian products, maybe aggregate a few different products together, and have they could buy this in a cross-border e-commerce sort of situation, and have these products sent to friends in China with a video message attached via QR code because they're mad with scanning QR codes. I mean, that would definitely work somehow. But then we just come across this idea of doing gifts in a nicer way, and especially when there's this impersonal type e-commerce gifts. And I got really excited about so Snapchat, right? Snapchat. I was also showing you the other day. It's actually super powerful. It's basically a camera. I think that's what they really advertise they are. They're a camera. Anyone can go into their lens studio and make different types of filters. And these are not just funny things, putting love hearts on your face or etc. like that. They're doing amazing things like they've got an ML component, which you can also create, machine learning models. But I was showing you one the other day, for example, where it just can turn you into a younger version of yourself.
It's so funny. It's creepy, but it's
funny. Yeah. So can you imagine how that works? It's pretty amazing. And then, so you can do other really interesting AR experiences with that. So I think there's opportunity to be able to give gifts digitally first. So you could give a gift card for sneakers, for example, and then launch straight into an AR sneaker try-on experience, which I think people will love. When I show people this type of experiences that you can see in Snapchat, and they a lot of people don't know Snapchat. People around my age, you look at the demographics of that, it's more like under 35.
Yeah, I don't think I have a Snapchat account.
Get one. But there's a really interesting thing with Snapchat, actually, they, in the middle of this year, have opened up the ability to put mini programs, Snapchat minis, into Snapchat, so anyone can go build their own app inside Snapchat. And this is following on the trend from China, for example. So in China or in Asia, there's the super apps. The super apps are your WeChats and everything, right? You don't need to get out of WeChat. You don't need anything else on your phone, because every app that you might have, your Uber, there's a mini program in WeChat, which is Uber as well. And so their play is to, they have payments. It's their big thing in WeChat, and you have all your conversations with all your groups in WeChat. So everything's inside WeChat. Now commerce is inside WeChat, everything. So this trend, I think, is really coming to the West, actually, and they might find it difficult. Like, I know, so Snapchat's putting this mini programs into Snapchat, but also I think Instagram now in Australia, if you have any e-commerce store, you can kind of buy, but it's not that smooth. You can see an image, and it could have prices. You could click on that, but what it will do, it will launch the browser. A browser's like over the top, and then you'll be in that e-commerce store, but it's not very smooth. They're changing this. I think in the US, they're just allowing you to go one-click buy. So integrated your store into Instagram, for instance. And then, the payments go through Instagram, which will be good for them.
Yeah. Everybody wants to control the payment gateways, right?
Yeah.
So how did you go from, okay, you've got a bit of brain spark together with Richard, and, how do you go from there to where you are now? Tell us that story.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, that's everything to do with, a common friend of ours. He's doing his own startup accelerator program for hardware, because he's a mechanical engineer. And, he's been in this startup world in Australia for about a couple of years, I think. And he met you maybe 2 years ago at some event in Sydney. Yep. And you were developing, this organization, the AI Australia, and everything that goes with that at that time, I think. And then because of this common friendship, he put us in touch with you, and we had we took too much of your time one night, actually. We organized the meeting. Say you organized this meeting, we were going to meet up at a local
local pub.
Yeah, local pub. And then because I've got that 2-year-old, we get sick more often than other people. They bring home things from the daycare. So I was pretty sick, and it's COVID, and I don't want to be seen in public like that, and I didn't want to expose it was not COVID, of course, it's just something normal. So anyway, we never met up. The next night we decided we could do a Zoom.
Yeah, but even on that, oh my God, we tried very hard. I mean, so we're in this local pub, right? And so we're in this local pub, and Sai says, oh, Tom can't make it. Well, first we thought you were going to make it, but then I was like, okay, no, you can't make it. And guess what? You're like a kilometer or less, right?
Yeah.
Or thereabouts from the pub. And it so happens that I reckon I could probably walk to your place.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of very close to the place as well. And we're like, yeah, okay, well, let's just try in a pub, try and see if we can do a Zoom call. It's just not possible. Really, we don't have one of these noise cancellation headphones, and try and do a Zoom. I never realized how hard it is to do a Zoom call in a pub. There's so
terrible.
much of background noise, lots and lots of background noise inside. They got the music playing, and there is no corner in there. And it just so happens that the microphones on phone. Again, we did not bring laptops, right? So we're on each other's phones, and the phone is picking up all the background noise, and we couldn't hear a thing. And by the way, it's like we didn't want to kind of have two phones listening in. We didn't have our headsets on. Trying to,
to me, I just thought you were having fun,
No. We're trying really, really hard, and we're trying different corners in a pub, and all looking really, really weird because nobody does Zoom calls in a pub.
Well, maybe this year.
But I mean, it's just not the thing. So we went outdoors, and guess what? Even worse. The outdoors was worse because that particular pub is in a fairly, it's facing the main road, and you've got all these buses coming in and out. All we could hear were the buses, and we've got decent phones, but geez, like you just can't compete with, the noise coming out of the pub, and you've got the buses in the background, and then you've just got the rest of the ambient noise that comes with the traffic. It was just not happening. No.
That same thing happens when I'm telling you I had to go on these walks every night talking to Richard, and he's just telling me about all the Australian birds he can hear in the background, because these phones just pick up on things that I'm not hearing. I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, the trick is do not go to a pub and try and try to do a Zoom call. And I guess if you do, and here's the other thing, I recently bought one of these new headsets as well, trying to see if they work any better. They still don't work in a pub. The only one thing I haven't tried is the AirPods from iPhone. That's my next thing I want to try, and see if you are in a pub and see if you can actually do Zoom calls.
Yeah, but the other struggle you have is you don't hear yourself, even if the other person hears you, because of the background noise in the pub.
Yeah, but I did find one pub in Sydney CBD where you can actually find a quiet corner and do Zoom calls.
Yeah, in the middle of the day.
No, I mean, as you know, I mean, we kind of work with startup founders from around the world.
Yeah.
And look, one of the joys of working with startups is, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. is the same as, if anything, sometimes more effective than 9 a.m. Mm-hmm. I don't know about your world. I mean, tell us a bit more about yourself and your world. I mean, are you kind of 9 to 5 kind of guy, or are you kind of like...
No, like as I said, no, definitely not. I mean, I like waking up. Well, I get up really early, so I like to work. Well, I can't work that early these days. I got to drop my son at daycare, and then I get to work, and then you just don't know when it's going to finish sometimes, because I've been in my work. Right now I'm working with Richard. He's in a completely 12-hour opposite time zone. So I'm working into the night with him, but it's always been the same, because I've always had teams in other countries. Like in Asia, it's not too bad. In Asia, there are only like 3 hours difference, so it's not you're not that far out. But that's I've always been just because I needed to communicate with people all over the place. That's
so. I mean, you obviously joined the incubator program, but tell us more about, what was your thought process around the incubator? Why even join one? I mean, you're a serial entrepreneur in some sense, and you, and both yourself and Richard, you guys have been through multiple, multiple startups.
Yep.
You guys have been, through this process before. This is not your first rodeo. So, what were some of your considerations in thinking about why even join an incubator program?
Because, I knew you'd get this type of exposure, and it's really amazing, what the AI Ventures does. And it's not just that. Look, in all the previous startups, the first startup I was in is that, I was just a staff there, I was there for 4 years. I had nothing to do with the investment and all of that. We all had a little bit to do with it, but, nothing like this. In the second one, it was all private funded. So Richard has, of course, spoken to investors all over the place. But these are more like private investors. The same in China, we've got private investors there. So look, we needed to learn about how it's done in this venture capital, way. And it's really interesting, we come into the program and everyone has to be trained. You train everyone in some sort of format, and it seems pretty common worldwide, probably based on, what is happening in America. And of course, no one ends up doing this exact format. You have to take the things out of it that you think are going to work, right? So we needed this type of training to be able to understand how to pitch and speak to venture capital investors. So, so we really thought this is good training, but not just good training. You get really good exposure. Like I said, the AI Ventures has been really amazing. We, we started the week one, and it's like, let's raise capital. The first week is raise capital, and it's very, I don't know, according to other programs that you look at, it's like kind of like flipped on its head a bit. But I think this is really good because that's the end game, of going through, is to get your pitch ready so that you can actually speak to investors. So you put this mindset at the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting you say that, because I'll tell you the story from a production point of view, right? Because as I was formulating this the incubator program, and we've been sort of chopping and changing the order many times. I mean, it's gone through many rounds of iterations, and I have a team of people, and they've obviously studied. I mean, I've had a bit of background through Microsoft and just being part of many of the incubators from around the world, looking into Y Combinator, looking at some of the world class, like, I mean, the best of the best of how they do it. So I had a point of view where that was happening. But as we were formulating our own, and even with our common friend Sai, I was sort of looking at theirs as well, and just talking to him as well as his own experience in running this. And I think what became very obvious was, why does, like, what are the endpoints? What, it's almost like, trying to explain to myself and others, saying, why should you even go through an incubator? What is the purpose of this? And what became very obvious to me was, let's think about what is not going to happen in 12 weeks. That was my starting point. Let's think about what do we want it to be not. And one of the things that was very obvious for me was just thinking about and contrasting this through my conversations with comparing and contrasting to other incubators. A lot of the incubators are designed to get a product out. And I've been thinking to myself and talking to the others, and there was a lot of pressure, by the way, even on me as well, saying, yeah, I mean, we got to run this incubator, and a lot of these companies have to be able to build an MVP in 12 weeks. And I'm like, let's just think that through, guys, right? Let's just think through, how long does it really take to build an AI product? Like, is that even practical? Like, if somebody's just got this really great idea, you really think you're going to get an AI product that's deep tech too, right? I'm not talking about like shallow AI and using somebody else's API, right? Like a really, high quality deep
There's
tech.
nothing wrong with that, right?
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is, but the types of companies that we wanted to attract were the ones that, are doing some really deep tech, and that was one of the a key criteria, a key part of our thesis. And if you're doing some really high end stuff, or even if it's a high end consumer app, where you're trying to be a unicorn, or you're trying to get not 10,000 people using it, but you want to get millions of people using it and worldwide, and you want to really get an MVP, that is world class in nature. Can that be done in 3 months? And and at the same time, that was kind of like one direction we could have taken. But on the other hand, I'm talking to all these startups, a lot of startups around the world, not just in Australia. A lot of them are saying, yeah, we've either got an MVP, and even with the MVP, they're not raising capital, right? So a lot of startups, or some of the startups, have been able to get to a point where they've got an MVP, and now they're stuck with, and what's next? So you've got the MVP, and what's next? Well, I got to raise capital, and hence they, come and talk to us as our ventures. So I wanted to kind of turn this around, and I'm like saying, what should come first? Should capital come first, or should the product come first? And then we ended up in a philosophical conversation because, I mean, this is philosophical differences. And I'm not saying, I mean, I can just imagine everybody's watching this just wanting to disagree with me. And then that's perfectly okay. Because, for some, I think it's almost to a point saying, you know what, all that matters is got to get a product out. And once you get a product out, the money will just happen. I'm like, I don't know. It does happen to a lot of lucky people, and don't get me wrong, it's great to be lucky, right? My experience has been, my observations, my personal experience has been the exact opposite, and maybe I've had to do it the hard way, where it's like, and look, I'm not discouraging anybody from trying the other way around,
but
where
it's
money
not so
just
much
happens,
the product, right? Getting the product out there. It's more, if you have to have a product to have customers. So it's more important with that product, whatever that product is to start bringing in revenue. Start building customers. And that will, surely that's going to be
but
one
I
of
mean,
the factors.
even then you still need, growth. So I'm just sharing with you just kind of just some data points. Data point number one is you've got a whole bunch of startups that may or may not have an MVP, or a version of an MVP that may or may not necessarily be attractive in us, where customers is signing up like it's hotcake, right? A lot of people think they have an MVP, but they don't, right? Unless you've got a queue of people lining up for that stuff or trying it out, saying, "Yeah, I want it, I want it, I want it." Um, it may or may not be an MVP. So that's the first thing, and most people get broke before they end up with an MVP. A lot of people I've come across, they've gotten broke, and they're raising capital because they just want to finish up an MVP. They get broke for many reasons, because of external issues, internal issues, whole variety of range of issues, but fundamentally end up wanting to get capital for them to finish an MVP. It's either harder than they thought it was going to be. It took longer, and most people just underestimate that. That's the first part. And the second part was even if they have an MVP, they're going, oh my God, I've got an MVP, especially the engineer types. They've got an MVP. Now they want to go to market, and they're going, gosh, I got to go raise capital to go to market. And that's kind of where they get stuck. So either way, if your MVP is going to take longer anyway, and even if you get the MVP out, well, you're still going to need capital to go and start selling, right? Then it's almost like, what is the more important thing? Is it important to get the product out? Yeah, kind of. It's important to get the product out. Is it important to start selling? Yes. But what's common between the other two? Well, it's really raising capital. So I thought, you know what? Let's just do something very, very different. As we're thinking about this incubator being capital backed, we're like, why don't we just think about making companies investor ready day one? Let's think about this incubator, and maybe incubator is the wrong word for this, right? Because, maybe I think about this as, how do we get capital ready? How do we become investable from day one? And if you become investable day one, and by the way, and here's the other fun fact, I speak to a lot of companies that have built an MVP, and then in order to make them investor ready, guess what we had to do? A lot of the times, not all the time, but a lot of the times, we're going to have to change the product. And that sucks. It sucks because then
they put all that effort.
They put all the effort, and then they're going to need to raise capital to make it investor ready. And you go, well, so you've got an MVP, but if I have to, pivot for whatever reason, and even if it's just an incremental pivot, not a pivot rather, even if it's just incremental innovation to kind of get it just that extra bit, you got to need that cash. And the founders are going, oh my God, do I really want to take that risk? Right? Because, oh my God, I've already spent X amount of money, and you mean I got to spend more money to make it investor ready, right? That just seems like a lot of waste. And so 8 out of 10, a lot of the startups that I talk to that have an MVP, they tell me, oh my God, if I only knew what investors really cared about, and if I only knew what customers care about, because investors care about what customers care about, right? Often, not so much investors care about what's in the MVP. They care about what customers care about. And if a lot of startups just only knew what investors cared about, then they would have the MVP different.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? Guess what? Bingo. That was kind of my bingo moment, saying, why don't we just kind of turn it on its head and saying, guess what investors care about? Let's start with that. And then now that you kind of have a better appreciation, obviously, there is a limit of what you can and can't, and every investor is different, right? So you're not going to get a single monolithic view. But if we can start exposing what investors think about from day one, then let's think about how do we reverse engineer this. Reverse engineer not your product, reverse engineer your whole business, reverse engineer your whole startup, you reverse engineer everything you've thought about, all the 360-degree things that you got to have to think about as a startup. How would I have structured my company, right?
Yep.
So oddly enough, we kind of went and said, well, let's start with what investors think about. Then let's think about all the things that go wrong in a startup from a financial standpoint. And again, a lot of the incubators, and no disrespect to other incubators as well, everybody just have a different thesis and points of view. We kind of just said, if you do have to sell this company, think about exit first, right? Think about what you need to get out of this. Think about the exit first, and think about how would you exit. And depending on what your exits are, your MVP is going to change. So let's not do an MVP and then think about an exit, or have exit kind of like a by the way back burner conversation. Let's kind of front load the exits first, and think about how so for example, if you've got an MVP, so if you've got a company that might end up being in the hands of Microsoft, as an example, or Google or an Amazon or Google, any one of those big tech, then what are some of the things that you might want to start thinking about baking in from day one? How would it influence your architecture? How would it influence the ingredients that you use, the tech pieces, and how would you make it portable? What are the risks you're going to take up front? What are the decisions you're going to make up front? So think about that up front. And I speak to a lot of startups, and a lot of startups haven't thought about some of those things. So I'm like, oh my God, let's think about that up front. And then as you will exit, well, guess what's going to happen? Your company structure is going to have to be maybe different.
Yeah.
So if you're starting in Australia, and if your exit's going to be in America, well, how have you structured it? And if you talk to the wrong accountant, or somebody doesn't understand the US and international borders and tax and a whole bunch of stuff, you may set up the company in a way, that may be different and may not be optimized. So again, we just kind of like started to reverse engineer that. And when we kind of formulated this whole, the table of content, it almost sounded like we were going in reverse order. It's like Flash, but in reverse order. Yeah, I don't know, how do you feel about that? Because it does feel really weird and awkward.
No, well, because I didn't go to one before. I wasn't even sure, but I was pretty sure you don't put capital raise up front. I didn't know about the rest of it. It seems like it's all totally logical. It feels like that week is exactly what you should be doing. For example, when we get, I'm still stuck in MVP week, still thinking about it. And you knew this would happen actually in structuring, and you told me about this the other day. So, after we start thinking about MVP, there's actually 2 weeks kind of on that from a different perspective. And then following that, it's just light stuff for maybe a while, actually, for a few weeks afterwards, because, you get really, the thinking around the product, and then even if you can build it or not now, it just takes a lot of thought,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's been, I just think it's just every week is exactly, what you need to think about. But also, weeks go quickly, of course. So even you do all of this, you do the capital raise up front, but it sets your mind in the right frame. But then you're already into the next week and the next week. So I don't actually know the normal flow, and if it transitions to a normal flow, or everything's like, you almost said it's reverse order now.
Yeah. It is definitely reverse order, because like a lot of ones. Look, I'm not saying product's not important. I do want you guys to kind of get to a point where, startups. I mean, if you don't have an MVP and you're thinking about this incubator, I would like people to know exactly what was going to be an MVP, and I'd love to be able to get to a point where, coming out of this, you may or may not have the full MVP, but you know exactly how to go raise the money to go finish off your MVP, right? Because there is going to be a point of time where, even if you have your savings to subsidize it, it'd be nice, I think, in my opinion, to be able to get some external capital to kind of help you, deep dive. And I think about the diving, analogy, where I always like to think that you never dive alone, right? And even if it means you may have to bring external capital to kind of help you fuel that.
Yeah, you
MVP.
definitely need, because you need to build a team, and you're not going to you're going to find 10 founders to come with you.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to, pay salaries.
Right.
And make people believe, in what you're doing. And then, because once you start getting customers, you need to devote, a lot of time to those customers, but then you'll also need a lot of time to find investors. So you're going to need, some team that can help you, especially concentrate on, on the customers once you start getting them, because you don't, they're so hard to get. So you don't want to lose, you don't want to lose them. So you've got to have a lot of customer service.
Yeah, but you're talking about this sort of timing, and how you're saying that everything is just kind of like exactly what you should be doing per week. There's just something that we hadn't thought about. We found, the team was actually telling me that we have a problem, right? And the team was saying the problem is that we have Christmas in between the incubator, right? Yeah. And and I was like, you know what? Let's just turn into a lemon. Sorry, let's just take this lemon into a lemonade, right?
Okay.
And I'm thinking, you know what? It's pretty intense, right? Let's just kind of find a way that we give people a break. You know, there is a break, so it's not like we're going to be working, and it's not like people. I mean, people got to have to take a break anyway. So there is a bit of a break, and I thought, you know what? Some of the startups, not all, are going to be pretty flat out anyway. They're going to be thinking about. I don't know about you, but if I had a startup, I'll be working. Maybe not on Christmas Day, but I'm thinking about my startup. I'll be,
Yeah.
Having Christmas, lunch or dinner or whatever, and I'll be talking about my startup to everybody in my family.
Yeah.
Right? That's just me. Again,
Yeah.
everybody's different. That's just how I operate, and I'm like, you know what? What's the story you want to be telling over Christmas to your friends and family?
Yeah.
What is the story you want to be telling? And I thought, you know what? You want to be talking about your MVP,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
I'd love to bring something to show because
Yeah.
our product is about giving gifts, and this is Christmas.
Totally.
So.
So I was like, how are we making lemonade out of this situation? I'm like, you know what? Why don't we just kind of structure the program just a little bit, just so that, before Christmas, you got to be able to demo something to your
Yeah.
friends and family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get on a break, and then maybe, you've got time to get your feedback.
Yeah.
So when you come back in January, you've actually had a bit of time to think about your MVP, not go dive in, nosedive, and see, if it was going to work or not. Because, things change when you come in January, you're thinking about new ideas and you're thinking about new resolutions. And that's probably a good time to think about go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even regardless of Christmas, I talk to friends and family, and they gave me lots of interesting, they understand the idea, but they gave me lots of interesting, like there's lots of interesting opportunities in there because there's a couple of different problems. Like, well, I got a good friend in America, and maybe they'll be interested in helping us go to America in the future. But I was describing this to them, and they were telling me about, for example, when you got your parents, they're retired. When you're my age, your parents are kind of retired now, and they're not so much interested in getting gifts anymore, but they're really interested in like having some memories of the past. So having people give a gift through a video, especially, I mean, maybe in America it's really important now because no one can get together. I mean, I don't know what's going on at Christmas there, but imagine it's this guy's birthday, and he's retired, and he's got friends from all over the place, all over the world anyway. So you can all collaborate together to make pretty much like your own web landing page for your birthday, where it's just got videos and messages and things like this all collated together from your friends and given with a present, so everyone can collaborate on this gift as well. And in that case, maybe this guy's not interested in any gift himself, but this could all go to some charity, for example. So his gift, he can give it to charity, and that can be a mechanism within what we're doing as well. And then, so that was just an idea coming from there. And then there's a lot of other ideas because all my friends have kids, and kids in the age range, they're just starting school, primary school, and I'll say 5 times a month. So maybe some weekends it's twice. They go to kids' parties, and they're always got to go to the shops, get a gift to take to the party, right? So, and this is also trouble for the parents who are, who are making the party. So it'd be interesting to have an ability to collaborate together on a gift card, especially if you're doing it with a particular retailer who sells the type of things kids are interested in, like toys. And so, you could suggest that anyone coming to that party, they all buy, they basically are doing it through a gift card mechanism. They're all putting money into a gift card. But not only that, their kid who's going to the party can sit down on the iPad, draw up a little card, make a little video, and then that kid whose party it is could receive this on the day after the party. They can go and respond to these videos, have fun like that. That I think they think that's going to bring really good joy to it. And it solves a lot of pain points around dealing with the gift, and especially if you're going to parties all the time, it's just going to simplify that a lot for the purchasing and the receiving of gifts.
So I mean, your ideas come a really long way. I mean, I get to hear your pitch every week.
Yeah.
We're about halfway in, I guess,
Yeah.
in the program. And speaking of which, tomorrow is a big day for you.
Yeah.
This was planned. We always wanted you guys to kind of get a halfway point. And tomorrow you're going to be part of a massive demo day.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of programs they do demo days at the end.
Yeah, I know. So this is pre-Christmas demo day.
There is a pre-Christmas demo day, and we do demo days
Yeah.
twice, right? One halfway, and it is a bit of a steep curve. How are you feeling about tomorrow? And tell us more about tomorrow. And,
Yeah. So tomorrow we've got 3 great speakers there, and you can tell us a bit more about them in a second. But they're gonna, what's interesting too, because also. Look, this would normally be we'd normally be in person. This is all different as well about this incubator, and everyone's doing this in incubators across the world this year. It's all virtual. And so you're able to get different people in who you may never otherwise have had come to an event, for example. So that's what's happening tomorrow. And then we've got a great opportunity to have our own virtual room. And for people to come in and out and meet us. I'm really interested to see how that works, because we've only been in this type of virtual rooms once. But it's such a good opportunity, because with virtual too, you can just get a bigger audience come basically too, because it's just so easy.
I'm so pumped. I mean, this time last year I would have never thought. I mean, so one of the things, for me, coming back to Australia, from spending a couple of decades away, was, I was just thinking, gosh, you just don't get the same global outreach you get in a locale. And even in Sydney, you've got a lot of people, amazing local investor sets and people, but you're still missing out folks from Melbourne. You're still missing out folks from other places. And if you're in CBD, that's great. If you're in Macquarie Park, for example, you're missing out people that are in CBD. So it's still a large city in many ways. And I would never would have thought of what we're able to pull off tomorrow. So we've got, for example, Gary Fowler. I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, having Gary from GSD Ventures is just absolutely mind-boggling. Anything about having somebody like that on our show, that's just amazing.
What's the GSD stand for?
Getting shit done. I love it. I mean, but it's less the name of the company. It's just more Gary. I mean, Gary's such a star, and having somebody like that from America, who's had 2 unicorns, under his belt, and that sort of success, and one that spends all his time in AI. I mean, that is just stupendous. And that's just one out of the 3 panelists we have. And then we've got, Mahavir from, again, quite a prominent member from Thai Global. And this is not just the local chapter of, again, it's not hard. I mean, it is hard enough sometimes to reach the chapter leader of Sydney Thai, right? Thai Sydney or Thai Melbourne, or the local chapter in Australia. But we're not talking about a local chapter leader. We're talking about global head of Thai, which is such a huge, prestigious capital and a networking opportunity to connect up with, just about all the who's. And I was a member of Thai for a while as well. And I realized that, the founder of Google or CEO of Google is on the board of Thai, and you've got Satya Nadella from Microsoft is on Thai, and that network of Thai is just absolutely stupendous. So we're gonna have Mahavir tomorrow, and that'll be like, wow, that's great. And then we wanted to go, oh, you just can't have a global perspective and and 2 big global perspectives. You got to have an Aussie perspective. So we got Dr. Steve Nouri, head of AI data scientist from Australian Computer Society, ACS. It's just, I just wanted to make sure we've got different perspectives. From an investor perspective, you've got a connector, and an angel, early stage investor perspective as well, late stage investor perspective, global scale ups, and then you've got ACS, which is perhaps the forefront of a pig body in Australia, but it does a lot more than just being a pig body. I mean, ACS is ACS. I mean, if you've graduated from computer science, you're a member of. If you're trying to get a visa or something like that, you've got ACS, or if you're in that club. So I mean, it is basically integrated to the fabric of our society in Australia, for sure. And so it's like, wow, can you imagine all of them in one session? I mean, that is incredible.
Yeah. So.
And
you pull it off.
It's like wow, like this time last year, I would not have thought we'd ever pull this off.
Yeah.
Like it's just not gonna have happened, right? And I think, again, I don't like to use the word thanks to COVID, right? I kind of think, with this whole digital transformation and serendipity, I think, and where we are today as well, as a resultant of all of that, I think we're at a point where I think it'll be fantastic. But I think the piece that I'm also really excited about is how are we using the Remo platform as an example to give all you guys a table?
Yeah, I know.
Right? So you're going to be on a table. You're going to be exhibiting digitally.
We get 5 minutes to have a presentation in front of everyone. Oh,
right.
Not 5 minutes, sorry. We get 30 seconds of that 5 minutes. But
well, but this is the thing. You're going to be on a table. You're going to be virtually exhibiting, and you get people to come to your table.
Yeah.
And you're part of Venture Cafe too. So it's not just the three people.
I'll tell you something. So this is where Snapchat comes in again. You know why? Because Remo, it's not like you can't put your virtual background because it's not like Zoom, right? So that doesn't support that. But you can download Snap Camera for your PC, and then you can create a lens in there, which you'll just make as your virtual background, which I've got to go do this afternoon to make your background virtual. Otherwise, you can do the other silly things, but I need to figure out how to make this background. So
yeah, I had I think before I was doing that as well, because even before Teams, because I always loved that virtual background in Zoom, and then for a little while Microsoft did not have that in Teams. So I was using the Snap lens on my laptop as well. Not for that long. I mean, and then it's only now that I've stopped using it because
because it's integrated everywhere.
It's now integrated.
Yeah. I'd never seen it until Zoom, and I never did Zoom until the March.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I have used Zoom. I mean, I think Zoom's kind of been the standard, but I mean, not to this level. I mean, like if somebody says Zoom, kind of like. It's easy sometimes to pick up WhatsApp. I mean, it's easier to do those one-to-ones, one-twos. But now Zoom's kind of become the thing. And speaking of which, how many Zoom calls are you doing at the moment?
No, not too many, actually.
Wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. No, because I do a lot of WhatsApp. Yeah. And then a lot of, in the past I was doing a lot of Chinese apps.
You bet.
No, which isn't Zoom or anything. None of that stuff would work there. But yeah, I mean, of course, we spend quite a few hours on Zoom every week on the weekend in the incubator, and we just I was actually really lucky because when I was working for the other company earlier this year, we never really did the virtual, and then because we had such a huge space and only about 10, 11 people. So there was no need to really work from home, and there was labs there and things like that. So I never got stuck into this, working from home idea that, most people have got into this working from home. I don't think that suits you. You're not a working from home.
No, I mean, look, I think there are degrees of working from home, right? So, in a lot of my corporate work, like for example, working for Microsoft or Oracle in one of these companies, I've always kind of been part of regional teams or global teams, or a combination of both. And so in many ways, I think a physical locale never really anchored with me anyway, right? Because, if I'm, let's just say in Singapore, I'm not really I'm working with Singapore subsidiary, but I'm not part of the Singapore team. I may be part of a global team, right? And just physically located in Singapore. So in some ways, I was already kind of working from home in that sort of a sense, because you're thinking regional. So in that sense, I mean, I think it was kind of working from home.
But you'd always be out and about. Even
I would always be out and about.
Working from home is in the tech, but you would never be at home.
No, I mean, again, I love working from home as well. I mean, I'm used to kind of having extended periods of time where I'm productive at home. Again, I'm talking about 20 years or more, like just being productive at home.
Yeah.
And out and about, but not in the office. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just me.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
for me, work from home means you have your own space, not in the office. For me, like I'll give you an example. Like, in the last 12 months, or in the last 2 years, now I just carry this with me everywhere I go. This is all I carry,
I know.
right? I don't carry my laptop.
That's
Um,
called, that's called mobile only.
yeah, mobile
Yes.
only.
Yeah.
Look, I kind of had mobile first, or
Mm.
mobile second, mobile first, and now mobile only.
Yeah.
And now I decided to have two laptops,
Yeah.
one at home
Yep.
and one
Okay.
here.
Yeah. So you don't have to transport it around.
No.
That's
And
really
people
good.
are like, why would
And
you
you're
have a
just on
laptop in
Office
the office?
365 probably, so everything's just there.
Yeah, I just kind of have Office 2 pretty much.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Home office and work office.
Yeah.
And, and since I've actually plugged my laptop in the office, I just don't sit in front of it. I just don't. You can't get me. Like, that's just not me. If I'm in the city, I'm out. I'm talking to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm just not sitting in front of the laptop.
Yeah.
It'd be so rare. Like, if it's only when there's a signature that it's, there's just a handful of types of things that I do on my laptop.
You can do it on that. Signatures you can do on
Yeah, you can, but
Yeah.
you want to kind of read a proper document, and
Yeah.
you want to see a contract, and
Yeah.
there's just legal stuff that
Yeah. Yeah. No worries.
I could do it. Getting a
You'll
signature
be doing
is
this
easy.
a lot.
But they're just, like, as I said, just very handful of things.
You know what's really interesting, I think, too, like this mobile only thing. So this design type of thinking, I think, maybe also came from China, because people skipped the desktop era there. They went straight from nothing to like being on phones in the scale on phones. So, and it gives people a different way of thinking, because the phone has different hardware in it compared to a PC. I mean, PCs have the camera, but you can do different things with this camera, because you can actually point it all over the place, and it's got all these other sensors inside it, so you can do a lot of things and interactions with the device, and react with the real world, or these type of things. Because Richard and I are also interested in this trend, which we think is really going to happen, and it sounds like mind-boggling. It's like the Internet of Senses, right? So the Internet of Senses is like, somehow there'll be some bytes traveling down and you're through the waves, and you're going to taste something,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this is really coming to digitally recreate these type of sensory experiences, through the internet.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of China, I mean, I've spent, kind of like you, I spent about 2 decades in Asia. I kind of remember being on QQ. Don't ask me why. 20 years ago, thereabouts. I was still a kid then. So it did make sense to be on QQ. This is going back some time, right? We're talking about late 90s, early 2000s. So I get that, to be on the Chinese QQ platform. When everybody else were kind of in Messenger, I was kind of hanging around Asia.
Yeah. Okay.
On that platform. And then obviously when WeChat came over, it's just a fascinating perspective, because what's also happening, I think, in China that I think most people don't recognize, in terms of how computation is completely different, in a sense that not only it's mobile only for most, it's also voice first, as opposed to text first.
Yes.
And I think
That's
people
right.
who grew up with computers as computer first, and then migrated over to evolved into the world of mobile phones, they probably are typers. So the first thing they look for were keyboards.
Yeah.
So if you look at the evolution of a lot of people, they went from a laptop to a BlackBerry to a phone. So, and that was a massive transition. The soft phones, funny enough, there are still people who prefer a BlackBerry keypad. Why did they went to keypad? Because they started from a PC.
Yeah.
Or a computer of some sort.
Thank God there is like the voice first, because I've been in a lot of I've been in a lot of taxis in China, and it gets really scary, because the laws there is actually, they not only recently, I think they really put laws around in various places around using your phone while driving, but taxi drivers love this. So luckily they're only sending messages by holding down the talk button and just doing that, which is not common. It's not common here. All the apps have this feature in it, but there it's really used. No one bothers to type, because there's speech recognition,
and especially if you have to type all of it in Chinese. I mean,
yeah,
gosh, it's like
because they're typing pinyin and then
well, I mean,
find the
exactly.
right
So
character and
that's
then
it. And so I think voice first, and this is kind of why I wrote an article around 2017, 16, 17, around conversational AI and how I kind of feel like conversational AI is going to come first to Asia, and this whole computational conversational AI is going to really revolve around Asia and may only end up staying in Asia first. And I think it's going to take much, much longer, I think, for the West to catch up. And I think in a mobile-only world, and where English is not the first language, and people that have not evolved from that, I kind of feel with what's happening with WeChat and other things, and TikTok, and these have become new metaphors of communication and new language of communication that, that pervades or I think transcends text and traditional sense of apps.
it's I find it interesting, because there's like a perception somehow in the West that China copies a lot of things, but okay, this might be true, maybe it is, but in terms of this type of technology, mobile technology, internet, e-commerce, they are like light years ahead in terms of not the tech, not what it looks like, in terms of their business models around using that. I was listening to something and they've got like the food delivery app, but everyone wants to extract as much money as they can and put it, so everything wants to be a super app. So this Meituan food delivery app just started putting extra buttons. One day it popped up with book a hotel, and then by like I don't know how long it took. I think it only took a year, and they were like leading the hotel bookings in China.
Yeah.
So everyone wants to be this kind of super app there, and the interface does become a bit messy because there's just so many ways into things. I mean, maybe it just looks like that because I can't read Chinese. Maybe it's very natural. But it's not just there; it's in other parts of Asia. Like there's apps in Indonesia, Gojek, they're the same type of thing.
Right.
So that's interesting. I'm pretty sure this trend is coming.
And look at what Grab is in Singapore.
Yep.
Or Singapore, Malaysia, a lot of Southeast Asia. Grab's doing the same thing. It's a full payment system, right?
Yep.
So look, I'm just conscious of time as well. Again, I'm still thinking about right now the event tomorrow. Yes. So that's at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. tomorrow Sydney time. And your demo is at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
It goes on for half an hour.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to want to have as many people, tune into Tom's presentation. We've got other incubators, other AI startups that are also presenting at the 7 o'clock. And then we've got Gary and Steve, Dr. Steve Nouri and Mahavir going to be joining me on the panel for a good 1 hour talking about the capital raise event. So I'm pumped. I'd love for you guys to join us. If you don't get a chance to ask questions now, join us tomorrow on the panel, and I'd love to hear from you guys as well. But let me kind of ask our executive producer, awesome Nick and Allison, see if there are any questions, that we could be answering from the audience.
Sure thing. Hi, guys. We've been going really well over an hour. We've got a lot of stuff in. I think we had a few questions coming in more for Tom.
Okay.
And just a little bit more about, I think we have some people, especially because you're our first kind of founder on the show. We've had Raz, who was a digital marketing expert.
Yeah.
But we wanted to ask you a little bit about, as a founder, what are some of the biggest, and maybe for someone who's never been a founder or a startup founder before, the most unforeseen obstacles that you've faced in your personal journey within the startup world?
Right. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, it's just like it's hard. It's pretty tough out there, and just finding the right customer. I mean, or with our tech before, it was like in my past company, it was like, I don't know. I feel like this is super deep tech. We were making our own nano-materials, these special materials, so that we could print them into pretty much little LEDs, and then this would form a pattern, which is pretty much like a secret barcode. and I call this like an optical frequency ID instead of RFID. And look, and I've heard this from other people too, like in this hardware space. You can build a product, but then there's always these customers want it really customized to what they're doing, and you can spend a lot of time going down that path, and it's very hard to really generalize, and then therefore a lot of energy is put into that. So I think you've got to find something where the product can really scale. That will help a lot. So that was challenges from the past. And don't get into super customization, because you could get stuck in loops within that.
And another question we had, as a smaller startup and a smaller kind of company, there are different company sizes, maybe one that Callum might start compared to maybe one in the incubator service. But what are some of the most important people to have first?
In your own staff?
In your staff and involved in your idea.
Yeah, right. I think you don't, it's, people, of course, they found alone. They found a company alone. But I think it's like you need a co-founder, or maybe even more. And then you need I think you need to bring in someone who might be a customer, first too. You don't even necessarily bring them to your team, but maybe your first customer will end up advising somewhat. And then, of course, look, you're not going to get too many staff until you actually raise capital. That's why it's so key to raise capital, because you're not going to be able to go too far if you can't really build up a team and to deliver, product to the customer. So, you need a co-founder, because there's so much to do, and all you could do by yourself is pretty much promote and pitch, which is a key to raising capital.
Absolutely fantastic. That's getting close to all the time we have this week, but we wanted to get from Callum a little quick announcement for next week, who we'll have on, and a little bit about her with Susan Hansen.
Yeah, look, I'm super excited to have Susan Hansen joining our show next week, same time. We'll be sending more announcements throughout the day and through the week. Super pumped. It's going to be a very different program for next week. So signing out now, and look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you so much Tom for having us here today.
Yeah, no, you had me.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm in the hot seat.
Yeah, you're in the hot seat.
No, thanks
Tom,
a lot
for being here with us.
Yeah, it was really great. It just, I don't know. I had no idea what it's going to be like, but it was just pretty natural. I liked it. It was really enjoyable.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Same here. This was fun. I don't know where the hour went. So.